Today, President Biden and Donald Trump both agreed to do two new presidential debates, the first coming next month, capping weeks of posturing and negotiation. That breakthrough came today as the Biden campaign took control of things with a plan that was months in the making. Biden using this video here to publicly challenge Trump to two debates on the Biden schedule with two ready partners on board, ABC and CNN. If a debate starting next month sounds different than usual, earlier than usual, it is. This will now be the earliest general election campaign debate ever. And that actually matters not only for people tuning in and paying attention, but also for the political strategy at play, which we're going to get into right now. The Times reporting this is what Biden wants for a couple of reasons. Democrats think early voting helps them more than the other side. I can't tell you about the future, but I can tell you the reporting suggesting this was a strategic move for Biden because they think that will be true again this year. And they definitely dominated in early voting in 2020 when they defeated and ousted then President Trump. They also know that the highly watched debates tend to mobilize people. Just about everybody knows that. Now, Democrats are thinking that jumpstarting the general election season early will be good for Biden. They hope it will benefit them because instead of this abstract discussion about Joe Biden, which, as you know, includes talk about his age or how he looks or how he sounds, which is a kind of an incumbent-focused view, the Times and other outlets and other reporting suggesting they think the side-by-side, his age to Trump's age, his presidency to Trump on trial, that direct contrast, which hasn't kicked in for people outside of news junkies, that will help them. I'll tell you something else. This new development today, which no one knew was coming, Biden dropped the video and it all kind of came into focus quickly, it also opens a window into something kind of interesting if you follow politics and all this stuff. It suggests how Joe Biden, who is the oldest president ever, that's a numerical fact, and he's running against one of the oldest challengers ever, Donald Trump. They're both older. But it shows how Biden is actually still very open to brand new strategies, even that break tradition. A June debate means Trump will also be on pace to face a verdict and a debate in the same month. And that could make for some unusual news cycles, to say the least. It could push against Trump or for him if he does come off New York prosecutors failing to convict him. So there is a lot to think through here. But when you take 2020, the history, what we've learned, remember, those were debates where Joe Biden and Trump clashed a lot, but people really got a close-up of the comparison, and it was what led to Biden beating an incumbent president, which is never easy to do. Let's take a look at 2020.
We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming.
He blew it.
It wasn't. Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job.
Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as president of the United States of America.
We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does.
One of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history.
I am the least racist person in this room.
I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that
because
question?
The question is,
a lot of
the
new
question
Supreme
is,
Court justice, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen.
Then President Trump did not exactly shut up, man, but that moment encapsulated something then. And remember, it worked for Biden then. It also shows why there is such wrangling over these debates, because they have new rules that the Biden campaign has basically apparently been victorious on that will limit both the crowd and the interruption aspects, which Donald Trump used not so much to win the debate on its own terms, but to kind of hijack it or short-circuit it. And again, that's just an observation. If you're a super Trump fan, you might say, great, look, they didn't like these debates anyway, and he knows how to disrupt them, so to speak. If you were a Biden fan or someone trying to actually listen to both sides, you might think, gosh, this got really out of control. And so they have broken with tradition to address some of that. Some more facts for you tonight. The debates will be in Atlanta at the end of June and then in September. That first debate will not have a studio audience. Again, that's part of what I'm emphasizing to you. The rules and the format matters a lot. The Biden campaign took the lead here, engineered this to some degree, got Trump on board. You need two people to debate, but without the fans that he loves to appeal to in the room. That's a Biden demand. This also bypasses the bipartisan commission that has organized these debates for many, many decades. It ends that tradition. And as with other Washington traditions, there are people who are invested in them because they benefit from them and they're part of them, and they say, oh, we can't change this. And there are other people who say anything new is a risk, and it is. It's a type of risk to do this without the commission and its sort of structural, historical advantages. But clearly, the Biden campaign thinks this is the better way to go. And we should note, the reporting is, and there's letters to this effect, they talked to the commission about trying to early it up and do other things, and they found it to be what they viewed as an unwilling collaborative partner. And just as we've seen this president deal with other institutions, they've had a whole running back and forth with the New York Times, they had a run back and forth with the commission. There are a lot of people around Biden who are clearly trying to send a message to the Washington powers that be. They don't need you. They don't need you like they used to, and they will cut you out if they have to. As for what Trump is up to, remember, if you are up traditionally and you don't care what anyone thinks, you avoid debates. That is what some incumbents in certain races have done. There is a presidential debate tradition, but in Senate races around the country, this is done more ad hoc. And if you're up 10 points and you're the incumbent, you usually skip debates. That's kind of politics 101. Donald Trump was a former president running in his primary, and he knew he didn't need debates, that they only had a downside for him. And remember, we lived through it. It was recent. Trump didn't do any debates against those Republican rivals in the primaries. The broader context here is a matchup that has problems for both sides. Again, when you're the incumbent president, you get a lot of coverage, criticism, and scrutiny, and that's how it should be. But for all the discussion of Joe Biden and the economy and the Mideast and the international problems and a lot of valid criticisms and concerns about him and his tenure, the politics of this are he doesn't want to just be assessed only on his own record all year, when the question is always in life and in politics is, compared to what? And the truth is, I just mentioned some of the factors of why there isn't great enthusiasm for Joe Biden. He doesn't have 60% approval ratings, but there actually isn't much enthusiasm for either of these candidates, both of whom who's been in the White House, both of whom are well known by voters. We have seen for many months, most Americans actually don't want this rematch at all. And Trump, who has now been running unopposed since he became the presumptive nominee of his party, is still losing. Again, this is just among people who show up in Republican primaries. Some of them are open, some of them are closed, but you see the numbers. Since Haley dropped out and he was presumptive, it's not 5, 6, 7%. Okay, it's double digits in big red states like West Virginia that are big red, like, mostly Republican. In key swing states like Pennsylvania, it's 17%. Arizona, another swing state, 20%. Those are people showing up to a Republican primary and choosing something other than Trump. I can tell you right now, if he only gets 80% of those kind of Republican votes in the general, he will lose. But there's a long way to November. A significant share of Republicans, though, basically are still trying to figure out whether this is what they want to go with. And remember, I've said this before, but it's true. If you're saying, okay, Ari, don't people know these are the only choices in the major parties? Don't people kind of see this is what we're dealing with? The short answer is no. Not everyone follows this closely. Not everyone remembers when Nikki Haley dropped out. Not everyone is counting down the months to November like we might in our newsroom. And so as the choices become clear, Republicans say the numbers you see on your screen will go down, that the anti-Trump vote will go away, that they will come home. But the Biden side of this, the reason they want the early debates is they think his honestly lackluster approval numbers are not great, will go up when compared to Trump, compared to the guy on trial, compared to the guy who, if you do follow the news, is saying things that are literally more autocratic and sometimes blatantly dictatorial than anything he said even leading up to January 6th, which is really saying something. The current president, meanwhile, has been making his regular appearances at government and campaign events while Trump has been in the trial for weekdays a week. Senator Mitt Romney, of course, who was once the Republican nominee, who knows about the debate stuff, he was asked about this today. I told you this all broke today, and here's what he said about how it might go.
The image that comes to mind is those two old guys on the Muppets, that sat in the balcony.
Statler and Waldorf.
Statler and Waldorf, all right? That's what comes to mind. But I actually think there will be a huge audience for these debates.
As the old saying goes, waka, waka, waka. We do know the old Muppets. Shout out to them. We do know the old candidates. Shout out to them. Nothing wrong with being old. Usually just means you're alive and have experience. And if there is going to be a giant voting bloc that only wants candidates under 40 for president, they will just be disappointed. These are the current choices of the two parties. We live in a two-party system. If you watch this program, you may know we've covered some of the problems with the two-party system and why there should be more choices in a different system. And we've even had candidates on from third and other parties, but none of them so far this year, the numbers have demonstrated anything like a Perot-level factor, and he didn't ultimately win either. So these could be the two choices. And again, the news tonight when it comes to debate, the Muppets had a large audience, and the debates tend to have an even larger one. In our balkanized, polarized era where we hear that people go to different corners of the internet and they get different information from over here and they watch different TV channels, and it's true up to a point. There are certain big events in sports and politics that do bring the whole country back together, maybe not agreeing together, but watching something together. They used to call it the monoculture, when everybody actually listens to the same Beatles album. So when you talk about it, you're discussing the same album rather than one version's QAnon lie about the album and someone else actually listened to the album. So that's what the Super Bowl's like. And if you look at 2020, the first debate, that's what it was like. 73 million people watching that debate itself, plus tens of millions more watching clips. That meant that 100+ million people in a very short amount of time could actually discuss the same set of facts. Imagine that, America. It's almost downright old-fashioned in a good way.